Good morning. This is Congressman John Garamendi, and we're doing our weekly report from the rotunda of the nation's capital. It's early Thursday morning. Just finished a show on Fox Business about the tax proposals that the Republicans are putting forth. It's going to be a very, very interesting and extremely important debate. What they're talking about right now is a huge deficit increase from $2.5 trillion to over $5 trillion of new deficit. And probably very, very little economic growth and not much for the working men and women. So we're going to have a huge debate about that. But if you're talking about debates, this has been a week of very, very important debates here in Washington, D.C. What we have seen is the third death of the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Men, women, families, children all across America came to realize that the repeal of the Affordable Health Care Act would lead to very serious problems for maybe 30 million Americans who lose their health insurance. And so it went down to defeat in the Senate. Unfortunately, something I learned years ago in the California Senate was that turkeys never die. So we need to be alert. It's quite possible that that repeal effort will come back once again, perhaps in a different form. And we want to make sure that when we look at the health insurance system, that we actually improve what we have today, not make it worse for Americans, but make it better. And there are many, many things we can do. Some of them are going to be part of this tax reform if it is actually structured in such a way that's good for small businesses and for middle-income Americans. We have to make sure that happens not only in reforming and improving the Affordable Care Act, but also in the tax systems that are out there. Another thing that's very, very much on my mind is what's going on in the devastated parts of America. Are we actually providing the kinds of assistance that are needed to restore Houston, Texas, the Florida Keys, parts of Florida, and most of all, the Virgin Islands, as well as Puerto Rico? There's some indication, in fact, there's a lot of indication, that the government is failing the people of Puerto Rico. We're going to be working on that today and on into next week as we work to make sure that there is sufficient money. But the Congress does not run the administration. That's run by the president. And frankly, as what we have seen now is mostly chaos and disorganization in Puerto Rico. So we're working diligently to try to get that squared away. We'll see what happens. It's really a sad situation when the federal government and really the government of Puerto Rico have not been able to organize themselves. It's not a matter of the supplies arriving over the ocean into the ports of Puerto Rico. There's more, maybe some 6,000 or 7,000 containers with food and relief supplies sitting on the docks in Puerto Rico that have been brought in over the last week by the American maritime industry. However, getting those containers, getting those goods off the docks, into the stores, to the people of Puerto Rico has been where the chaos has occurred. And that's really a governmental function of not pulling together the necessary elements, the transportation system, clearing the roads, making sure the trucks are there, making sure the gas is available to the trucks. Gas is there, it's just not available to the truckers. So we've got some work out ahead of us. On the international scale, frankly, it is a frightening situation. The president continues to be bombastic and belligerent in his words and in his tweets with North Korea. It's been said by many that we're closer to nuclear war now than we ever were since the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s. I don't think that's exactly true, but it is an extremely dangerous situation. And my plea to the president is very simple. Tone it down. You're not going to solve the problem with a bunch of third grade schoolyard rhetoric back and forth with another student. What we need here is quiet, strong deliberations, moving to negotiations. There are things that we can negotiate, but we have to have China, Russia, Japan, South Korea working with us. And quite frankly, the president is continually disrespecting most every national leader in the world in one way or another, particularly personally getting into a personal verbal brawl with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. That doesn't help get us to negotiations. Not to worry. America has the strongest military in the world, and we're quite capable, should it ever be necessary in a war, to defeat North Korea. That's not an issue. What is an issue is how do we move from this very dangerous situation to one where we are negotiating the elimination of nuclear weapons on the North Korea peninsula. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I've been in many classified hearings, and I know that there are ways that this can be accomplished, but it cannot be accomplished with bombast and verbal insults flying back and forth across the Pacific Ocean. We need to calm it down. Speak softly. Tweet softly. Don't worry, we have a really big stick if it ever comes to that. We pray and we must work that it doesn't come to ever having to use that stick. Thank you so very much. This week and next week are going to be extremely important for the American people, particularly for those soldiers that are on the peninsula of North Korea, in South Korea, and for the people in Puerto Rico. Have a good weekend.